We'll come to that. Let me give an example of Ptolemy the First. What did the Jews do on the Sabbath? The strict Jews? Nothing. So if you were going to attack the Jews, what day would you pick? I'd pick the Sabbath. And that's exactly what Ptolemy the First did. When he learned that Jews observed the Sabbath, he chose that day to take Jerusalem. And Josephus had a comment about this that is worth noting. So here's Josephus quoting another historian's derisive report of the conquest of Jerusalem. Here's what he wrote. The people known as Jews who inhabit the most strongly fortified of cities. How many have been to Jerusalem? Have you seen it? It's up a hill, isn't it? And it fortified. Of course, the walls that are around it now are the Crusaders' walls. They're not the old walls, but the people known as the Jews who inhabit the most strongly fortified of cities, called by the natives Jerusalem, have a custom of abstaining from work every seventh day. On those occasions, here it is, they neither bear arms, they won't defend themselves, or take any agricultural operations in hand, nor engage in any other forms of public service, but they pray with outstretched hands in the temples until evening. Consequently, because the inhabitants, instead of protecting their city, persevered in their folly, Ptolemy, this guy, was allowed to enter with his army. The country was thus given over to a cruel master, and the defect of a practice enjoined by law was exposed. The defect of a practice enjoined by law was exposed. That experience has taught the whole world, except that nation, the lesson not to resort to dreams and traditional fancies about the law until its difficulties are such as to baffle human reason. Isn't that something? That's from Josephus as he wrote against Appian. Well, Ptolemy then did what other rulers did. He named the city for himself, and he called the cities that he conquered Ptolemais. And you will find several cities by that name. Let me give you just a couple of those locations. On the upper Nile, he called the old city of Thebes in Egypt. He renamed it Ptolemais. He changed the name of the old city of Acco, which is mentioned in Judges chapter 1. He called that Ptolemais. And by the way, that city is known today. Since medieval times, it's called Acre, A-C-R-E. Now, we're just looking at this intertestamental period, and here's what I want you to see. I want you to see that those two groups, which were up there a little bit ago, the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, just absolutely Syria, Egypt, and look who's caught in between. And the Ptolemies and the Seleucids fought, we'll come to that, and battled around Israel again and again and again and again until these people prevailed. But here this Ptolemy attacks on the Sabbath and destroyed the city of Jerusalem. Well, he also set about to make Alexandria a great city. So here's what he did. He put 100,000 Jews from all over the empire, his area of the empire, Egypt and Israel. He brought 100,000 Jews into Alexandria, and he put 3,000 Jews in his army. Now notice the prophecy in Isaiah 19, 18, 19. Isaiah 19, 18 and 19 prophesied the inclusion of Jews into this Egyptian army. And who would have thought in Isaiah's day that that would be possible? But it was possible. Let's go to Ptolemy II, Ptolemy II. And you, again, with these names, you could be an internet expert pretty quick on the Ptolemy. Ptolemy II was named Ptolemy Philadelphus because of his devotion to his wife and his sister. You heard me right. See, the pharaohs of Egypt, who would they marry? Sisters. Because remember, they thought they were gods, and so you can't mingle with the ordinary. And it is true that some of the later pharaohs, because of recessive genetics, were blithering idiots. Well, Ptolemy had inherited Egypt, And he thought, hey, if the Pharaohs do that, well, that's what I'll do too. And the Herods practiced that as well. Well, Cleopatra, the last of the Ptolemaic line, was an example of the contention and infamy that practice caused. Well, this guy, Ptolemy II, also built a lighthouse at the entrance to Alexandria's harbor, and it's one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. I'll tell you what's fun to do sometime is look up some of these incredible buildings that are so-called 7 wonders of the ancient world, and look up the lighthouse at Alexandria. It's named after Pharaohs. Some of these structures really were incredible. Well, that's Ptolemy II. This is the guy who put together a great library at Alexandria. And what happened to that great library? It burned down, which is terrible, really. That some of the, wouldn't you love to have just to know what was there? Well, Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, the most important thing that he did, we've already mentioned it, but now we'll tie it in with our story and won't have to pause too much. This is the guy who assembled the Jews to make a copy of the Hebrew Scriptures in Greek. That's Ptolemy II. Well, there are several other Ptolemies. Let me go through this list rather quickly. We're in the interest of time, and some of these don't impact Scripture. Ptolemy III. Ptolemy III is known fundamentally for one thing. During his reign, the empire reached its greatest size. There was a 4th and a 5th. And the Ptolemies ended with Cleopatra. Now we're going to end up by talking about the wars between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. And I want to again quote Josephus. What happens to the Jews under the Ptolemies? They were left to their own devices except for paying taxes. But listen to Josephus tell about the plight of the Jews during the wars between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids. This is a quote. Now it happened that in the reign of Antiochus the Great, who ruled over all of Asia, that the Jews suffered greatly. Their land was sorely harassed. For while they were at war with Ptolemy Philopator, with his son, who was called Epiphanes, it fell out that these nations were equally sufferers, both when he was beaten and when he beat others. So the Jews were like a ship in a storm, which is tossed by the waves on both sides, and just thus were they in their situation in the middle between Antiochus' prosperity and its change to adversity. Bottom line, the Jews during this period of time were just kicked pillar to post. So with the Ptolemies, just think of Egypt, think of Ptolemaeus, think of the spreading of Greek thought, and then if you'll make a note that the Ptolemies were defeated by the Seleucids. The Battle of Banaeus, 198 BC. This empire goes down in 198 BC. And I've heard that pronounced Banaeus and Banaeus, Battle of Banaeus. That's the end of the Ptolemies. All right. Let's start on these Seleucids. Okay, what let's do. If we get started on the Seleucids, we're gonna be in trouble. I hate to get something going in the middle and then try to pick it up. Sometimes it's easy to forget those things. Let me go back to one other thing and talk about this, and then we might dismiss a little bit early. If you will write down Ptolemy V, I think that's where we left, Ptolemy V. something happened in his reign that has to do with our scripture. Kind of obliquely, but it's really good. Ptolemy V is immortalized on the Rosetta Stone. I used to joke and say I went to school with her, but that's not true. Ptolemy V is mentioned in the Rosetta Stone. Let's talk about the Rosetta.